it's Joe Mullings, and I am on the MRI Network. And guest today, I am very excited about Sharon Hulce. Sharon is with Employment Resource Group, one of the MRI family members, and she is in Appleton, Wisconsin, and joining us today from Appleton. Thanks for taking time out of the busy day.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and a number of things. First, share, if you wouldn't mind, with the audience who may or may not know, but your tenure with MR, and then sort of how you got into the business, and then I want to dig into a couple other things I got to peek behind the curtain on with you.
Sure. So this is my 24th year with MRI. So next year will be 25. I always said I didn't want to be in the Ring of Honor because it makes me feel old. But 24 years, and I got into the business actually kind of by a fluke. I was working for a women's clothing company, and I was traveling via air all the time. Every day I was in a different city, and I had a bad flight where we didn't have any landing gear. We didn't know it till we got into the air. And after that, I became a very nervous flyer. So I started looking for my next life's vocation. In this industry just sort of ended up on my lap, and it's just been the best thing ever.
What's your desk specialty, office specialty? Share a little bit about how that looks.
Right. So I work construction and have worked construction now for 24 years. Our office not only works construction, we work manufacturing, we work banking, credit union, and then we work function-based positions, anything across the top. So sales, marketing, IT, finance, operations, supply chain, anything that's in that sort of C-suite, VP level in any kind of company we would work on.
So the question always comes, first of all, the fluke. I don't think anybody goes to college to become a recruiter, myself included. It does sort of happen across us at a crossroads, and it sounds like that was the case with you. How come construction? Did you previously have experience there?
No, this is a cute story. So I walked into my former boss. I worked for another MRI office and actually ended up buying my practice so that I could go into business and start Employment Resource Group. But when I walked into Russ's office, he said, "Okay, we have to decide what your desk specialty is going to be." And I said, "You know, Russ," I said, "I really don't care, except for the last 9 years, all I've done is deal with high maintenance women. So if it could have little to nothing to do with women, I would appreciate that." And he said, "How about construction?" I said, "That'll work." And it's been perfect because it fits my personality to a T.
What
Because I
would you
love to
describe that?
engage
Yeah. So
with the guys.
what's the personality? Are you a guy's girl? How would you describe that?
I am. So I grew up on a dairy farm. So I would tell you that I love to flirt and BS, which is perfect for a male dominated industry as a girl, right?
Yeah.
So, and the guys are amazing. Not that I don't ever deal with women, because of course I do. And I don't want to sound like I don't like women, but the reality is they make quick decisions. And I love that. Even if it's no, I don't care. I just want a yes or a no. I don't like the whole dance of I got to think about it. And so that's what I love about this industry. They make quick decisions, they make bold moves quickly, which I think makes for outstanding business and makes for great conversation when I'm talking to them. So I love it.
Yeah. And so you and I had a chance just to chat last week. We had another subject that came up on the table as I've moved into the CVO role with MRI Network. And we got down path and we talked about philosophies and things like that. And it came out that you just published a book.
I did.
And that's what sets up the construction thing, because Sharon's got a book here, if I can get this straight. So the book was released in the beginning of the year, right? A well-done professional midlife crisis. And that's why I wanted to jump into it is here's this person coming out of women-centric product, and then you jump into a male-centric world. And was that pre or post-crisis?
For me, that was pre-crisis.
Okay, do tell.
It was. When I started in this business, you know, I had some engagement with Jack Canfield when I worked for the women's clothing company. The organization had brought 10 of what they felt like were their high performing, high high performance people into a room and decided that they were going to have us work with Jack for 3 days straight.
And
The
tell the
interest
audience who Jack is, by the way.
So Jack Canfield wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul and Success Principles. So that's kind of the two that he's best known for.
Yep.
So great guy, highly motivational. And so I was in my late 20s when I first met Jack. And one of the things that he said to me just really stuck with me. And that is, everybody knows what they need to do to be successful. It's the fear attached to doing it is why they don't do it. And, I was a young entrepreneur trying to figure out how to maneuver this business and going from very much a women dominated world to working with a male dominated world and trying to learn the construction industry, because basically I knew what a hammer was and that's all I knew at that point. Now I feel like I could probably build a building, but at that point I didn't know much. So interestingly enough, we ended up 1 through 10 that next year, and I ended up number 1. And he said, I always remembered you because I felt like you were the most tenacious person in the room. So fast forward, I go into this business. I'm in this business probably about 7 years. I'm a fairly new mom, and I knew exactly what I needed to do to transform my life. I was 45 years old when I first started my crisis, and I still remember sitting in my living room in my bay window on one of the chairs thinking, I am 45 years old, and if I'm sitting here at 55, I'm going to die, and I need to change it.
And you and you jumped what I call is the worst thing in the world to have is regret.
Right.
And so whenever you're on a decision or in the precipice of a decision, I always do the rocking chair test that was taught to me by Tony Robbins. And Tony said, Joe, if you have a decision, I need you to sort of time travel to 80 years old and you're sitting on a rocking chair on a front porch and you're rocking back and forth. And are you pissed that you weren't able to have the courage to make the decision?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. The last exercise in the book is very similar to that. It's to write your story as if the New York Times was writing an article about you upon retirement. What would the article say, and would you be happy with what it said? And then, so it's sort of that forward thinking, what do I want people to say about my career? What do I want them to say about my life and my legacy? And am I living that today to get to what that article we would want it to say?
Yeah. And it's funny because my very first, and I read the book and I loved it, by the way, my very first underlined was what Jack said in that seminar never left me. Everybody knows exactly what they need to change to make their life everything they want it to be. They just don't have the courage to do it. They don't have the courage to make a change. So, chat with our owners or high playing AEs or new AEs. What were some of the most courageous decisions you had to make in the business that you wish you were standing next to yourself back then and told yourself not to be so afraid to make it?
So I would tell you probably the first was the decision to completely change out of everything I knew to be true. It would have been really easy. So having worked for a women's clothing company, what would have been the obvious choice would have been maybe retail or some of those other things. But I know myself well enough, and that was sort of that first leap into, you need your life to be so much more than it is today. So my first leap in doing that was I had to flip over every leaf eventually. So changing and going into an industry that I knew nothing about, and literally knew nothing about, that was tough. Then from there, I would say probably the toughest thing I ever did was buying my desk and starting Employment Resource Group. I knew that, so the way my previous owner did the business was very old school. It's a phone business and, it's just about the phone. And I remember the day I decided that I was going to leave. I had a client call me and he said, I'd love to buy you breakfast. I've sent you $500,000 this year. I think I should at least meet you. And my boss said no. And of course, I'm pretty damn stubborn. So I went anyway. And that was the day that I went, this business has to be done in a different way. So I decided to start Employment Resource Group and to do it all retained. And that was the next courageous was to flip from being 100% contingent to that day I walked into Employment Resource Group, I never did a contingent contract again, other than for an MPC once in a while.
Yeah. And and that's really important for people to understand. You know, I got into this business December 4th, 1989, and I worked for somebody for 2 years, and I knew that as well at that time. Um, but every single time that I made what appeared to be a risky choice from other people's vantage points, oftentimes were the best choices I ever made. Whether it was opening my own office, whether it was heading into an industry like yours I knew nothing about, whether it was only doing retainer, whether it was asking for higher fees from my existing clients who were already paying 25 and me moving them to 30 and afraid I was going to lose the business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those are usually the decisions that you have to make that you tend to shy away from.
Yeah, I've always felt that. So going back to what Jack said, couple things that I realized. First of all, courage is the value that, I mean, obviously there's honesty and integrity and all of those, but I so value courage. And for me, every time I don't make a courageous move or decision, or I don't make bold moves quickly, I lose. And I'll be damned if I want to lose. So it's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to do it because I, I, I will not, if I fail and I failed because I tried something and I was courageous enough and it didn't work, I'm okay with it. But I will be damned if I'm going to lose because I wouldn't try.
That's that regret word again, right? That regret word is what will kill you. And people think they have to be courageous all the time. Without fear, there's no courage.
That's exactly right.
Right? You have another
that's
excerpt
exactly
here
right.
in your book, and I know you live this too. Your personal and professional lives are extremely interconnected. You are one person. Everything about what you do, every decision you make, is all interconnected because you are one person. Why did you write that?
Because so the book is built around one of the trends, obviously, because I'm very involved in our community. A lot of people use me as sort of network central. They come and they all were saying the same things. They would say, you know, I'm very successful. I make great money. By all outward appearances, people would tell you that I'm wildly successful, and I am so unhappy. And what was happening is either there was something in their personal life which was holding them back professionally, or something in their professional life that was holding them back personally. And having that awareness of things like, what in your DNA are you just really good at? Like, you never had to educate or train yourself to it, but for whatever reason, you're just good at it. Those are your key indicators that if you pay attention to those, they help to catapult you in your career into happiness. So for me, my sister told me this probably not all that long ago, and it was like this aha moment. She said, "You are so much like our dad was." And I go, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And she said, "You're so damn intuitive." And when I think about it, Joe, that one characteristic is probably the number one characteristic that served me well in this business. Because I got to tell you, if it looks like a rat and it smells like a rat, I'm going to find the rat. And I do. So it is amazing how just those natural gifts,
Yeah.
one thing, and if people pay attention to all the personal stuff, it helps the professional. And if they really have keen awareness and listen and pay attention professionally, it really does create awareness personally as well, and happiness for that matter.
Yeah. You know, I call it dissonance. There are so many people that have to lead a work life and a home life, and that dissonance is really, it causes disease, and that's what disease is, dis-ease. And when you have that dissonance in one side or the other, I think that can end up taking your legs out from underneath you. I also agree with you. So to me, intuition is the universe's way to whisper the truth in your ear. And that's how you're wired. That regardless of belief systems, that you were wired to do something specifically, just like Michael Jordan was. You know, just like best athlete or best singer, entertainer, they happened to find and trusted their intuition, and without worrying about what anybody else said or judged them. Right? Spectacular people who do spectacular things don't give a shit about what everybody else thinks. Nobody has ever done anything wildly successful by being average.
You know, it's interesting. I'm sure you said you read the book. And I did a pro bono search for our performing arts center. They had
I like
they
that
weren't
part.
very happy with their brand new
Yeah,
president.
yeah,
So I walked into Rotary and I said, I'll do the search if you let me do it for free. I didn't know anybody. I had worked for another MRI office. I had been on the phones and I wanted to get involved in the community. And it was so interesting. When the search was done, one of the most magnanimous leaders in our community said to me, if you ever need anything, whistle. And I said, actually, I do. I would love for you to be my business mentor. And I wrote this in the book because it was one of the most profound business piece of advice I ever received. He said, Sharon, there's three types of people in this world. There's 85 percenters. And he said, quite frankly, they live a nice life. Sometimes they live paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes they're doing okay, but they are okay with going to work, doing their jobs, coming home, relaxing, having dinner. And that's the life they create. And they love it and they're good with it. But then there's 15 percenters who want more. They want to be wealthy. They want to be wildly successful, and they're willing to take that extra step to make that happen. Within the 15%, though, there's 5 percenters. And he said they will do almost anything over and above something illegal to create wealth and to really go after an extraordinary life, not an ordinary life. And he said, when you meet a 5 percenter, you will know it. And he is exactly right. And that's much like you're talking about on the whole extraordinary. For me, it's always been about I don't want to be anything but a 5 percenter, and I will outwork anyone to make that happen.
yeah. And I want to make sure because you and I just met. I want to make sure the listeners understand that success doesn't equal wealth. What it does equal
Right.
is when you find something you absolutely insanely love, you will be inside that 5% yardage marker, and an outcome is wealth. But you can't be a 5%er who's pursuing wealth for the wrong reason. Would you agree with that?
I would say anyone who pursues wealth won't find it.
Right.
Wealth finds you because you are happy and you absolutely love your life's vocation.
Yeah.
And the purpose of writing the book at the end of the day is to have something tangible I could hand to those people and say, this will help you to figure out happy.
Yeah.
Because if you figure out happy, the rest of it will fall into place.
All right, let's jump into another part here. So it's about discipline, right? One of my favorite personal examples is working out. I literally, absolutely, at my core, hate working out. Yet I do it regularly. I try to stay in great shape, but I hate it. So how do I keep doing it? Every morning, the alarm goes off at 4 a.m. I say to myself, extraordinary, not ordinary, extraordinary, not ordinary, extraordinary, not ordinary.
Right.
Is that discipline?
It is very disciplined. So I think the biggest thing for me, and again, it goes back to what we talked about, which is personal. I was 36 when I had my only child. So I have one daughter, Katie, and it was probably in her teens. And she said, Mom, I'm so glad you work out and you take care of yourself because I want you to be here for your grandchildren. So a personal reason is the reason why I do something that I hate to do every day. And I do it really early. I mean, people think I'm crazy getting up at 4 a.m., but I know myself well enough to know that if I don't do it first thing in the morning, I don't do it. I'm tired when I get home from work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't get home from work until late. So the reality is I discipline myself to get up even when I don't want to. Like right now, this morning, Derek, my trainer, is on Zoom and he's, kicking my tail at 4:30. And I'm thinking to myself, I absolutely hate every minute of this. And when I'm done, I'm so proud of myself that I did it that I'm like, okay, that's over.
I love to
Worst half hour of the day.
I love to have a fellow psycho, so I'm up the latest every day at 4 a.m. And it's rare that I don't want to bounce out of bed. And in those rare moments that I have to bounce out of bed, you have extraordinary, not ordinary. Mine are just put your feet on the floor.
Mhm.
It's really that simple.
It is.
There's nothing magical. It's just like, just put your feet on the floor.
Well, and don't you think so much of it because it's so easy to have really horrible self-talk.
Oh my
And
gosh. Yeah.
I mean, how easy would it be to say, you know what, I'm tired, I'm just going to stay in bed. And for me, coming up with a mantra that forces me to do it
Hmm.
help me to just say, get up. And, so the extraordinary, not ordinary 3 times helps me to go, all right, get a
Same,
grip
same.
and do it.
Feet on the floor. And here's another thing that I want our viewers to clearly hear what you said. You made it important for you because it was important for somebody else, right? So
Right.
you wanted to be there for your granddaughter. So therefore you assign value to that. And that oftentimes we will do things more for other people that we love than we will do for ourselves. So that's a really critical point for people to think through. If you're having a hard time doing something, try and map it back to somebody that you love and therefore it's important to them. You'll sacrifice more for them than you will for yourself if you are the right type of human.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. All right, and then last one here. This could be my favorite. The call to action is I like what I see in the mirror.
Mhm.
A lot of frustration came from knowing I couldn't ultimately be who I wanted to be from where I was personally and professionally. I was raised in a farming community, so staying married and expected and going into that. But the last line, I didn't want to I didn't want to spend it frustrated by not being everything I knew I could be. Do you think that too many people live other people's version of who they think you are or supposed to be?
There's absolutely no doubt. So where that plays out in, so for example, in our organization, we have everybody at the beginning of the year do dream boards. And for years, everybody's dream board encompassed their kids' goals or their husband's goals. And they said, this is your dreams. This is what you want, not, I mean, if you want something that ultimately would benefit them, that's great. But if you don't want it bad enough, you won't accomplish it. So for me, I mean, right now, my daughter's only 20 years old. She's not even close to getting married, much less bringing grandchildren into the world. I'm 55 years old. So for me, the end game is very clear. I work out, I eat healthy, I do all those things so that I can be there when she has babies and God willing, right? And I think that so many times people make goals for other people and they don't own it themselves. So when I made that decision, I realized that so many things in my life were holding me back from what I knew ultimately, that if I was sitting in the rocking chair like you were talking about, or I was writing that article, I would think to myself, why did I waste my life?
Hmm.
Why did I not do everything humanly possible? And, my daughter and I've had this conversation because she was only 8 when I got divorced and she's 20 now. And she said this to me many times. She said, Mom, while I obviously wish you and Dad would have stayed together, my life wouldn't be anywhere near what it is if you wouldn't have made the courageous decision to do what you did.
Yeah. Yeah. And you look, they're always watching us, right? Now, whether you're a mom, a dad, or you're running an office, you're always being watched. And you have the opportunity, and I tell this to a lot of people, you've got the opportunity, especially when you've got children, to lay down the right talk tracks, not the wrong ones, of
Right.
anything is possible and why not you? And if you think about, there's a reason for generational poverty because the conversations revolve around poverty, not empowerment. And then there's generational wealth because sometimes those conversations also around how to create wealth or success. And as a leader, you, myself, the people watching this, you have a chance to hip check out a really shitty talk track in somebody's head or lay an example down that their life will be dynamically different should they choose to grab it and put it in there, or you and I or others make sure that we replace it or help them replace it.
So I think right now where that applies in our world. So obviously, having 24 years in this business, I've been through several downturns. And I said to the team the other day, I said, COVID-19 doesn't live in here anymore. But I said, here's the reality. The longer we talk about it, the more it impacts our business. When we went through 8, 9, and 10, construction basically stopped. I mean, it was so challenging. And we never lost, we raised our top line revenue every single year. And it's because our conversations with clients went like this. We understand that there's a great recession out there. We've chosen not to participate. So I said very much the same thing. It isn't that we don't want people to be safe, and it isn't that we're not working remote and all of those things. But I said the longer we wallow on the fact that, oh, poor us, the more this will impact our business. The reality is this: it exists. We're aware it exists, and we feel really bad for the people who are suffering and being impacted by COVID-19. But we are so blessed that we are able to work and have an impact on organizations, because right now they can top grade their companies, and there's going to be a time where it's going to get really noisy again, and they're not going to be able to do that.
Right.
So having those positive conversations every day is exactly what we need to be doing right now.
Yeah, that's spot on advice. That's spot on advice. No surprise that you're continuing to crush it in your late 50s like I am. I love to have company there, by the way. So you released this. Is there a book tour coming up?
There is. So it's obviously been postponed, but we're scheduled to start in September at this point.
Okay.
Forbes is keeping really close tabs on, obviously, when people are going to start booking keynotes, and we can do book signings and those things again. But we will start in one form or another in September, even if it's doing some virtual things. And then, of course, they already have me starting the next book.
Okay.
So that's upcoming project.
Good. I look forward to seeing that as well. Can a sneak peek on what the subject would be, or is it Kick-Ass Volume 2?
You'll love the subject. So it is about magnanimous leaders who don't want to admit that they're over their skis. So the title of the book is "I Feel Like Such a Fraud."
Interesting. You know, this is scary. You and I are living in each other's head here. And so I had a conversation with a quote unquote leader the other day. I'm like, are you afraid of losing your leadership? Or are you afraid of what they're going to do to you after you lose your leadership? Same thing.
It's incredibly difficult to be a magnanimous leader and admit we don't know what the hell we're doing.
Correct. So, well, listen, Sharon, this has been a ball for me. It went really fast. We went through almost 30 minutes already. Anything in closing for the network before we head out?
I would just say it is challenging times, and I know that there are some of you who are looking at your desk and you just think there's absolutely going to be no end in sight, oil and gas, all those industries. And what I would tell you is this: look for the positive, understand where you can make a difference. I just did a presentation on how you can do consulting work on people who are either laid off or people who are really in this thoughtful, I need to change industries because I'm in hospitality or aviation, and being really thoughtful about helping people to do that. So if they have any questions about even creating a different revenue stream while we go through this, I'm happy to have that conversation as well.
That's awesome. You're awesome. And that's the strength of the network.
It is.
It is. All right, listen, have a great day, and I'll connect with you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
You bet. This has been Joe Mullings with the MRI Network.